Hello and welcome to Grody and Unprofessional. My name is Justin McMenamy, and my mission is to share both profitable and painful leadership lessons I have acquired over a 20-year career as a misfit in corporate America. In this episode, we search for a definition of innovation. Does Ron Popeil's Pocket Fisherman qualify as innovation? Is innovation only obvious in the rear view? And what is the line between being clever and being stupid? The man, the myth, the legend, Jim Weber. It is so good to have you back on Grody and Unprofessional.
Good morning.
Now, I'm going to kick off this conversation here. This conversation is probably going to span a number of episodes, and the conversation centers on a word that I don't use very often. It's a word that I don't really like very much because it's become cliche. Everybody uses the word. Everybody feels like they can just throw it around. And that's a word, innovation. It has become the buzzword. CEOs use innovation. Startups use innovation. Everybody uses innovation. It was not a written rule of Grody and Unprofessional, but it was definitely an unwritten rule of Grody and Unprofessional. I had no plans on ever using the word innovation as part of the episodes of Grody and Unprofessional. But for you, Jim Weber, there is no greater honor or enjoyment that I could have than to sit down and chat with you about innovation. And the reason why is because, as I shared in previous episodes, you are an innovator. And we're going to discuss what is innovation, what isn't it, why is it, how big should it be. We're going to have all those aspects of the discussion, but I'm excited. You had an opportunity across your career to be a part of a lot of different projects, a lot of different parts of a large, bureaucratic, established, entrenched organization. You were the innovator inside of the rigidity. And sometimes in your career, that innovation came with fanfare. You were celebrated. And sometimes you got thrown out in the back into the mud puddle and said, we don't want your kind around here. We're going to get into those stories as well. I was reading something you wrote, and you said your career was slithering through the minefields of a very large and successful enterprise that had strict processes and a strict mentality.
Whoa, I wrote that?
I think so.
I'm impressed.
And the reason that I'm here is because I own the microphones and it's my basement.
That is correct. And I know, is there a bathroom here?
There is a bathroom.
Good,
We
great.
can take potty.
We may have to use that.
That's right. After I left the organization, we worked together. I was part of a team that led a small company with the goal of innovation, the goal of bringing new products to market, the goal of challenging the status quo. And so what I'm also excited about is you and I had an overlap. The tail end of your career and the front end of my career overlapped, a few shared experiences, but I am excited to take experiences that we've had and compare and contrast them on what makes a team innovative. How do you curate innovation? How do you start innovation? How do you prevent the evildoers from coming in and wrecking innovation? So the first thing I want to wrestle with and first thing I want to discuss, Jim, what does the term innovation mean to you? What is innovation?
Man, I spent a lot of time in my life trying to figure that one out. And I'm not sure. In fact, I am sure. I don't know. Because some people say, well, that was innovative, or that's innovation. And then I realized that it could be an adjective, an adverb, it could be a verb, and it could be a noun. And I have to admit, based on your introduction, which I'm still blushing, I think I've been all four. Mm-hmm. And then there's the people who will say, well, what's the difference between clever and innovation? And as Spinal Tap David St. Hubbins said, there's a fine line between clever and stupid, which I have to admit probably resonated with me quite a bit through my life as I watched this and being a part of all this thing. So as I try to recenter myself after that glorious opening, somebody might ask me, and they have, are you innovative? And I say, sometimes. And are you clever? We all are, sometimes. And so try to put some meat on this thing. I finally concluded one day that we had to better off put it into a term of results.
Correct.
And so that's what I did. I just finally said, innovation is you have an idea. It's great. Most people stop right there and goes like, well, I had that idea a long time ago. Before you did. Well, that's great. Okay, so you had the idea. What did you do with it? Well, I ran it by a couple of people or whatever. Did you make anything from it? And did it do anybody any good? Mm-hmm. Is it in a company? Did it make them money? If it's in a philanthropic organization there, did you do any good? So that's where I'm going to set the definition for me, because otherwise it's loose as can be, because everybody, to your point, uses this on everything that they do. Well, that was innovative. Really? So I did have to create, and I'm not a person that necessarily likes to do this. I had to take a view like DEF CON. Okay. DEF CON 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. I had innovation levels.
Sure.
Because some of the things that I observed were clever, innovative, but it's not something that I would ever do, like Ron Popeil.
The pocket fisherman?
The pocket fisherman, exactly right, Ron Popeil. And you go like, well, that's not a... By the way, I got the DEF CON thing backwards in my life. It's 5 is the least, 1 is the highest. I always had it the other way.
Correct, same here.
So we're going to use the exact same thing. So DEF CON 5, Ron Popeil. And you know what? This makes as much money out there as probably anything else.
Yes.
Some guy has a small idea, it balloons, or somehow they convince you that this is the best thing in the world, you need to buy one of these things, and it sits in the junk drawer. And, whatever. So I had to come up with this thing because there are innovations that are at 1. Everybody's got their own view of it. If you ask everybody out there, and you can look this up on the internet, it says, what's the top 10 innovations in the world that's ever happened? And usually the one that says the wheel. Correct. And I go like, wow, that's innovation. In fact, I've been accused several times in my life of reinventing the wheel. And I came up with an answer. And I said, well, that's not the worst thing in the world because it works.
That's right.
So it's the one that doesn't work that you have to worry about. So I created this level. And like I said, I don't like to do it because there are some 5s and 4s and stuff that made a real difference in life.
Yeah.
But really, they were just sitting there. And that somebody had the moxie to go in and actually
do it.
Yeah. And then make it happen. My father was a farmer, born and raised on a farm. But if you really watched him, farming was his second. He was an inventor or a maker. It really was a maker. And he made go-karts, and he made micro racers, and he made garden tractors, and he added everything to the lifts out there with hydraulics and stuff like that. And he had no formal education, but he had been raised out of the Depression, and he was going forward. He wasn't going backwards. And so I'm watching sort of a intense Ron Popeil here.
Right.
But he is someone to be admired because, man, he could make that 180 amp Forney welder talk, and he got to be really good at it.
And was he driven by the desire to create, the desire to earn, or the desire to be known?
I would say that all 3 have some element of it.
Certainly.
But the last one was a driver because his brother turned out to be very famous and made a lot of money and all that stuff. And so there was always that family in dynamic.
Brotherly competition.
Yeah. But at the same time, he didn't have all the privileged life. His dad died when he was 14 and that sort of thing in the Depression. Rough life there for him. And he wasn't going back to that Depression. He was going forward. He always talked about making it big and doing something like that. And he was really, really good at this almost level 5, but maybe level 4 ability, because a lot of people could not weld like he could. And of course, his resource was Strebeck Salvage Yard in Gibson City, Illinois, where he would disappear sometime and come back with all kinds of iron.
I don't think they're a sponsor yet of Grody and Unprofessional.
Well, I think they're still in business.
Okay, I'll reach out to him.
Anyway, he goes over there and he drags his stuff back, and that's where he got his metal from, because, where would you buy, where we live, where would you go buy metal? Well, go to Strebeck's over there. Anyway, so he practiced and practiced. He didn't know he was practicing. He was making things. Yeah. And he was making things and making things and making things. And he was always talking about, he saw these people in and around where we lived make things. And he was inspired, like, those guys aren't any smarter than me. And so eventually, I could not have done this, by the way. You asked me why not. Because what he came up with, I have no interest in.
Sure.
And so back to innovation, there's got to be connections. There's got to be connections with what you're doing. So context, being a farmer, being the fact that his sons were sent off to engineering school, he decides that the beans, and sometimes I wonder if he decided or he thought the world wanted their beans clean. But anyway, he makes this thing called the Weber Weeder, and it's a little 3-wheeled vehicle which you sit on the front of it and you steer it with your feet and you use your hands to go through the thing.
Yep.
Well, his timing was outstanding. All the farm kids were going off. There was a reduction in the amount of kids available out there to do this bean walking thing, which I did a lot of, so I was aware about what a lousy job this was. So he makes this thing, and you can see in his eyes, he was on a path.
Yeah.
This was it. This is it. And he is not to be denied. And I was impressed with that. I saw him make all these things, and then he got this one thing here. At some point in time, I watched him shift to what he really wanted to be. He went from inventor to I want to be the spokesman.
Sure.
I'm in the limelight, and I'm doing it. Now, let me dial ahead a second. I was curious about your second company.
Sure.
So I look back at the guy who started the whole thing, Greg Sauter.
Yep.
And I ran into something called a docuseries where somebody interviewed him.
Oh,
in a
sure.
2-part series. And I didn't know anything about the guy. And about, 5 minutes into the first one, I said, "There's my dad."
Oh, sure.
And I said, he would say he's an inventor, but they asked him what he'd like to do. Oh, I like to go out and promote.
Correct.
My dad shifted from being quote-unquote inventor to the salesman of the century. This guy could talk you down. I was like, wow. So I was amazed at the similarity between these two guys.
Yeah.
Both worked on the farm. Both of them found the idea on the farm.
Yep.
And what is the one thing they both did, or one did and the other one just had? It was they went and hired engineers. In this case, I had 2 engineers in the family.
Same with Greg.
And so bingo. And I was like, wow, the similarity here is remarkable. But both of them committed to, this is what we do, this is everything, and they knew they had this nuance in the whole process. So was this all level 5 or 4? I'm not going to, because they did something that other people, they're not Ron Popeil anyway. Yeah. But the shift over to being the spokesman for the whole thing was, now I say I couldn't do that. Well, I have no interest in that weeder, but this was his opportunity to go from being a nobody to being a somebody.
Right. And
showing your brother that you can do this too. So the other thing, in my case, once you create one of these people, you've unleashed somebody. And now he's trying to invent the next great thing.
Right.
And he's a hammer and everything looks like a nail.
Yeah. It is fascinating to watch, not just within agriculture, but across all industries. There is a type that creates, that invents, that tries to find a need and fill it with a product. And oftentimes they end up with a company that is actually boring to them. It was exciting and energetic to get started and to get going, and there's an aspect of the business that's really exciting. Maybe it's the pitch side or it's the invention side. But as a company grows, it requires purchasing, and it requires some HR, and it requires, we got to get patents, so we need a lawyer. You actually find that the inventor gets bored with his company as it gets farther in. And I've even talked to inventors and founders that have said, man, I don't know if I want to work at my own company. It's changed. And so you'll see an exit. So they'll sell or the product will wind down. They're like a moth to the flame. They can't stop but go back. And it shows up oftentimes, and this even happened in the precision planting environment, where the founder goes and starts another company immediately down the street. Well, he's still a farmer, so he's still got familiarity with farming problems and farming issues. This happens across the country. You'll see, why are there 5 conveyor belt companies in this tiny little town in the middle of Iowa? Well, because the conveyor belt guy started 3 of them, and they split 2 ways. They plant companies, but their interest lies in the solving of the problem, not necessarily the completion and the execution of the 20-year run to get the product in the market.
To your point, we had a situation, Anchor, Illinois. M&W Gear Company was formed there. They've been around quite a while. The W was Warsaw, the M was Miners. They made dynamometer, or Warsaw. I don't know if it was a falling out, but they split off.
Yep.
So they made dynamometers in Colfax, which is 4 miles away, and then they made a different kind of dynamometer in Anchor.
Yep.
Now, as far as to your point about going on and trying to do the next thing, he did a lot. And this spawned some interesting things. Now, I get to say I work for one of the largest companies in the world and one of the smallest companies in the world.
Correct.
And when I say I work for him, I did whatever I could do to help him.
Yeah.
Anyway, the next one was something that I got involved with. He created the idea of mow and spray. Okay, so what is that, Jim? Well, mow and spray, he saw this little sprayer, a spinner. This was a little bitty thing, and I think they were pushing it in the third world countries anyway. He got a hold of one, and he put it on the back of his garden tractor, and he sprayed the width of the mower, mow and spray.
Yeah.
By the way, when he invented things, they sometimes didn't turn out the way he wanted.
Sure.
But then he would say, it's better.
It's a feature.
It's a feature. It's remarkable how he could turn that thing around.
Right.
It's like, that's pretty cool the way he did that. Anyway, and he was the only guy I ever saw that made two wrongs, made a right.
Yeah.
Which was when he invented, he didn't really know what he was doing sometimes. And you're going like, well, the gear, oh, I see. You didn't really need that gear, but you did that. And then, oh, now it works. Well, that's cool. So that was really remarkable.
I've always heard that 2 wrongs might not make a right, but three lefts
turns do.
That's
Yes,
right.
Absolutely. So he gets this idea. Well, the problem, of course, is it's spraying all over the tractor, too, because it's a spinner.
Yeah.
And, of course, he's already convinced himself the droplets are the way to go because the farm wife does not want her flowers being attacked. And, of course, at that time, you could go get these high-pressure sprayers that spray it out. You know about this. You work for a company that do this. And then shoot all over. And, of course, the drift, and they would kill the flowers and all that stuff. But this was only going to mow. You knew exactly where it was at. And they, okay, that's great. So he kind of looks at me, engineer. Oh, boy. So I'm sitting there one night going, oh, I have an idea. You can call it an invention. You can call it a creation. You can call it whatever it is. I created a double pump sprayer with one moving part.
Okay.
And I made it out of PVC. And I showed it to him. It's like, oh, this is magnificent. Doesn't spray on the tractor. Mounted on that little drawbar thing on the back, where you can pull away. And then I had a couple other fancy little things. But it was clever. Let's throw clever in it. And some people say, well, that's quite an innovation. That's what my dad would have called it, quite an innovation. Well, anyway, he puts it in there, and so he gets it, and he is excited. This thing is working and great. Long story short, we run into one of these things in life which you don't expect. It was my fault. I'm to blame for this one. I won't call it fault. I'll just say I'm to blame for this. So we made about, and I can't remember, 75 or 500 of these things. And they went well. Nobody complained. They were fantastic. And unfortunately, I do a lot of reading. And there was some evidence that 2,4-D caused birth defects. And so I'll shorten this up by saying I called a halt to it. Mm. And my dad looked at me and says, you're walking away from $1 million.
Sure.
And it hurt him. As I could tell her, I said, I have to sleep at night. I have to sleep at night. I can't do it. Mm-hmm. And so to this day, I have one sitting at home. Okay. If you ever want to see it,
sure.
I have one sitting at home. And it does work. It's very focused on just this thing. Because the first thing a lot of people say, well, could you use it? No.
This is what it does.
For this one thing. That's what I would call a little bit of the difficulties as you walk through the innovative world, is sometimes you maybe make something that maybe isn't going to have an impact that you want. Mm-hmm. And so was it innovation? Clever? Probably clever the way I did it, but since it never made anybody any money. Oh, by the way, we did sell them for $75 a piece. I think it cost us about $20 to make it.
Nice.
And so
that's good margin.
Absolutely. We sold 500 of them. They had paid for anything that had to be done. They had to pay for the patent anyway because he wanted a patent on that thing.
You mentioned it's difficult to measure innovation directly. I would agree with that I've also heard in a similar domain that the difference between bravery and stupidity is often the outcome.
It's probably true.
And I think there's an aspect of that with innovation also. You're going into this with a desired outcome, an unknown path, and you're going to take some risks. You can't know what's going to happen. And so oftentimes it's a lot easier to look back and say, oh yeah, that was innovative, than it is in situ to say, yes, we're being innovative right now, because you don't know the market, you don't know the technology. There's so much unknowns. And so there is a little bit of running into the dark and hoping that innovation happens before I smash into a concrete wall, be it technical or commercial. I think the other part, as I think about innovation versus another term that I use, which I would call optimization. They're both improvement. They're both moving forward of a product or a concept. When I think of innovation, I think of more nonlinear thinking or nonlinear jumps versus optimization. Everybody kind of knew that that's what needed to happen. We maybe didn't have the wherewithal to do it yet, but everybody kind of knew that was the direction we were going to go, whether it be with a given product or a given innovation. At least for me, there's almost an initial like, you did what? Like I think I understand. But then over time, it becomes obvious. Like I'll use an example. One of the examples for me that I remember is the iPad.
Uh-huh.
We could go to the iPhone. The iPhone, I think, usually gets used in the top innovations and things. And you could look at it at multiple levels. At some level, Steve Jobs didn't invent any of the components that went into the iPhone, but it was very innovative in the architecture and the user experience, that there were things that it was like instantly, wow. Now, we can all look at our phones today and say, well, it was obvious. Everybody wanted to have their Rolodex in their pocket, and everybody wanted to have a phone in their pocket. But I remember the iPad, when it first came out, I think it was like 2008, 2009, 2010, somewhere in there, there was this massive debate as to whether anybody needed, it's not a computer,
right?
And it's not a phone.
I remember.
Nobody can put that in their pocket. What is the use case going to be for this? He's out of his mind. He just took this phone that's really successful and just said, make it bigger. Like it felt obvious, but it felt foolish to do it.
Yep.
I'm not necessarily casting a vote, but I love the concept of the iPhone. At some level, it was obvious, but at other levels, it was completely non-obvious. The iPad, at some levels, it's obvious. At some levels, it's non-obvious. In hindsight, it was all obvious. Like, of course, people need an iPad because nobody wants to use a laptop and they want to be mobile. It wasn't obvious when it was all happening.
No.
Ex post facto, yeah, of course. Why wouldn't we all do that? Then there comes 97 copies of the iPad. The Samsungs and the Googles, and they also like to use the word innovation for all of that going on. To me, that's optimization. It's not wrong. It's not evil. It's not bad. It's just not innovation. The category being created, solving the problem in the brand new way, either through technology or market approach or sales distribution, doing something for the first time in a brand new way, even if it's using old components, but as a Lego piece, it's put together in a new set. That feels more innovative than saying, I see your Lego pieces are all red. Let's make them blue. That's what the world needs.
We're watching it. We watch it all the time. Bamboo makes a 3D printer, and they've improved upon all the other people before that, the Creality or whatever. And a company named Elegoo just came out with one, and everybody's fawning over it. They copied the bamboo, but they made it cheaper. Now everybody just talks about that. Now I can dial it all the way back to who really launched this. Well, 3D printing was a damn good idea, by the way. The way they did it, the rapid prototyping. I have a 3D printer, but I have the MakerBot, the original one. When the patent ran out, they saw a home printer and made this thing, and I have one of the originals because I looked at it and said, this is really going to be a world changer. Mm-hmm. This is going to be a big deal. Now, it hasn't come to that point yet, but it will. It's still coming. I think people think it just flips overnight, and it takes a while. Not everybody wants to make something.
Correct.
That's when you first figure out, why not everybody? Why is that? I don't know.
You touch a really important point there, and it's a side point, but oftentimes people think that technology adopts overnight.
No.
And the reality is a lot of industries, like you look at like an iPhone or a smartphone, it's accelerated, and it was a decade. Most times it's 20 years for a technology to come in, and people will start businesses and raise funds and this is all going to happen overnight. I've sat through so many pitch decks where the CEO says we're going to go to 50% market share in the next 18 months.
Never happens.
It doesn't happen. I didn't mean to cut you off.
No,
I wanted to
in fact,
there.
we'll just keep going on your direction. EVs, electric vehicles.
Correct.
Right now, of course, everybody thought they were going to take over. I went, there will be problems.
Correct.
There will be issues. I said, you're going to replace 100 years of very capable mechanical engineers honing that other thing over there, and they're still honing on it, and that this was just going to immediately blast it out of the water, even besides all the other political issues and stuff like that. I said, me personally, believe that the future is electric. It's the way it's going to be, and nothing I can do, nothing you can do. You can argue all you want, blah, 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 but it's the way it's going to be. But it's not going to be overnight.
Right.
And you just don't replace a 600 horsepower diesel engine overnight. No, you don't. And then, of course, then they get into the area, which is the most ecological. That's not the issue. Those are issues, and they will be sorted out. But it takes a long time. I've always made this comment. I'm pretty good at predicting future direction in technology. And it's like, oh, you think you're special? I am terrible at picking the time.
The timeline, yeah.
It's awful. I'm going to dial ahead to something. We created a program, a dynamics program, and I was a progenitor of that whole thing. And I remember sitting there thinking, well, this is the way everybody's going to do it in the future. And this was 1984. And to me, then was 1994.
Right.
We're 41 years later, and it's finally coming to...
We're almost there.
We're almost there. I was like, wow, did you miss that one? Swing and a miss.
One of my favorite statistics on this front, if you had to guess, Jim, when was the last steam locomotive used in production, not produced, but the last steam locomotive in the United States, I'll tell you, 1986.
Oh, you're kidding.
No, it was used as a shunting engine in the East Coast. Why? Because it was bought in 1946, and there's a 40-year useful life on a steam engine, and you're not going to take it out of cycle when you're running a locomotive company. Now, there's bigger engines and better engines that comes, but this thing still has usefulness. We still have depreciation on this thing. And so you use that as an analogy. Yeah, you can launch electric cars. That's fine. But yesterday, somebody bought a brand new gasoline car that they are going to use to its fullest life. At least not the first owner, but the marketplace is going to use it to its fullest life. And so often people think that innovation is this light switch that happens in the marketplace. What is most unfortunate is they build their business around the requirement that innovation happens overnight. So they'll raise funds, or they'll have a burn rate that requires, we need to sell this to 100,000 people by next Friday or we're going to go bankrupt. The answer is you're going bankrupt. And someone will come behind you as the market evolves, as technology evolves, and they will actually be the successful one. And there's a whole bunch of dynamics of why that is, but one of the dynamics is the complete miscalculation of how slow the market evolves, despite what is plainly obvious to you as the inventor that this is going to be a world changer.
Absolutely. We're watching some of this unfold right now. Ford just announced that they're going to end the Escape, which is one of their big money makers, and they're building this EV platform in Kentucky. Yep. And so they're rolling the dice to some extent. Now, I'm sure they have some backup plans with other vehicles they have, but it is interesting that as they look at the future and what's it going to be. So we're just going through a very natural, determining everybody's experimenting. They're saying they're innovative, and I go, well, yeah, I guess that's what your version of innovation is. I guess it would be a verb or an adverb. They've decided they're going to be. Anyway,
You bring up the auto industry, and that has been fascinating to watch in the electric vehicle over the last 10 years. That's where I think a great example of how the word innovation and the concept of innovation has been so used and abused. So Elon Musk runs out in front and creates a $100,000 hypercar at low volumes, raises a ton of capital, has a bunch of social media presence, and gets an IPO with a PE ratio that is infinite, basically. Like his PE ratio is above any technology company. and you have a stack of old guard steel manufacturing CEOs that have been fighting to get their PE ratio above 12 for the last 40 years. And they look at this whiz kid out in San Francisco who's got a PE ratio of 796, and they say, we need to be a tech company. We need to be a software company. We need to be an electric company. And so they all race out. And then we're going to have all electric by 27. All electric by this and this. And you and I experienced the auto industry 15 years ago where they were all going to go to diesel. Everybody was going to go all diesel because of fuel economy and cost. And so they all race out and they dump a bunch of money into it. In my observation, most of that is because that's what they think the investor wants to hear. The CEO thinks that's what the investor wants to hear, not necessarily what the market is asking for, not necessarily what technology allows for. The part for me that was fascinating in this, I don't know his name off the top of my head. I could look it up. The CEO of Toyota, about 2.5 years ago in 2023, said, hey, I just want to be honest with you guys. We have sold more hybrid electric vehicles than anybody in the entire world. We have been investing in battery technology longer than anybody else in the world. I don't know this Elon Musk guy very well, but I can tell you that for the next 15 years, battery electric hybrids is going to be the answer. And he lost his job. He was let go as CEO of Toyota because the mob wanted EVs in the future. This
wrong answer.
And the irony is, you fast forward a year and you have Mary Barra and Jim Farley saying the electric vehicle market isn't evolving and emerging as rapidly as we thought, so we're not going to be pushing as heavily on the EVs. And it's to say that there becomes this mob mentality around innovation. And I believe that one of the main reasons is that it's under the momentum of trying to push for a stock price, at least at the executive level, more than it is about the rigors of understanding where technology is and where the market is. And you and I have been part of big companies that have been under innovation umbrellas. And I was part of a project where, well, the CEO said this out loud, so we've got to do that. And every engineer in the room is saying, yeah, so we're violating physics if we're going to try to do that. What does the product manager say? Well, we should try. We should continue and try. And every engineer's like, this is a suicide mission. Why are we doing this? Well, the CEO said it out loud. As an engineer, you kind of hold your breath and wait for the CEO to say something else out loud so that we can just put this this monstrosity to bed.
Now, I don't disagree, but I can put a different twist on that.
Okay,
too.
Please do.
Yes. In my life, I've had less problems with the execs than the engineers.
Okay.
And you can somewhat know what direction you're going because they're like, I know what I'm doing. This is what we've done. I want to continue what we've done, or I want to do what the competitor does because I like what he's doing.
Correct.
There's that envy, that competitor envy.
Yeah.
I mean, you've had to sense some of that.
Yes.
Now, the guy that you're talking about, that might have been an idiotic statement, but there might be a tweener.
Right.
And you're looking at the guy who was always going for the, hey, maybe we could go a little different direction and make everybody happy in this thing because you can do this because we are going to help create something that you can do, that you go like, well, and the guy at the top goes, I can sell that. And that happened. It did happen. You saw part of that. I personally can say I always have a jaundiced eye, and the book that I tried to write but gave up on was For Innovation, Do Not Be an Engineer.
Sure.
That would have been the title of it.
Because you get so stuck in your ways? Is that what you're talking about?
It is absolutely. I know how to do this. This is what I do. That's what I get employed for. Who moved my cheese? You know that.
Yeah.
I'm going to use the
book title. Yeah.
Yeah, the book title in this whole thing. And some people say, well, these guys are smart. Yeah, they are. They're really good. They're really good engineers. In fact, they've honed these things, and they're good. I think something you've commented about that at some point in time you got to turn it over to the people who are going to productionize it and stuff like that. And I've always been impressed with what they've done with the internal combustion engine.
Yes.
I don't care. You can hate it or whatever. I am impressed with how they've honed that sucker. It is the most optimized machine in human history. Amazing what these mechanical engineers. Some people say, "Well, you helped." I go, well, I wasn't that guy. These guys are in there with hours and hours of tests and stuff like that, and angles of injection, and they got data, and they got this, and they got better materials, and they could run the higher end pressures. When I grew up, of course, everything was a V8, and it was a monster 401 cubic inches or whatever it is. Today, you can get the same horsepower out of a 4-cylinder.
Right.
Now, some of them are even knocking down to 3 and whatever. And so they said, well, it's a 2-liter. And I said, just think about this. You go down and buy your bottle of 2-liter Pepsi, and you go,
400 horse.
That's it. She's putting out 400 horsepower. And you're going like, really? That's impressive. So I have just a counterpoint to your comment.
Yes, I love the counterpoint.
The guy at the top, he's looking at it from a marketing standpoint.
Yes.
And he's throwing something out there. I'm going to try to make them both look good. He's throwing something out there, hoping that somebody will come along and turn that fish into something that we both like. And these guys down here are like, no. I've run into both, let's put it this way. But I had less trouble with the execs, because if you say that, they go, okay, I can sell that.
Right.
Oh, sure. Oh, we can sell that. We'll paint it red and boop, we'll make money. The guys over here are like, no.
So we always make them blue. We don't make them red.
So it's my experience, and that's great. I really can tell you that it has been most of my life is that the engineer has probably raised his eyebrow at me more. I suppose it's because the execs, they come up through marketing or whatever it is, and so, hey, it's anything, let's go, sure, those guys will figure it out, whatever it is, right? Which is also a dirty trick on their part. Correct. Like, they'll figure, right?
Yeah.
Here, take this.
Here, figure it out.
Take this fish over here. And these guys over here are like, no.
The last point I wanted to make on the topic of what is innovation, my experience and my observation is innovation is not constrained to technology or product. Innovation can absolutely be in manufacturing, it can be in marketing, it can be in distribution channel, it can be in sales technique. Innovation can exist far outside of just a given technology. In fact, precision planting, as we've mentioned, there was a lot of products that came before my tenure. There's a lot of products that our team put into the market. Many of them were the first in the industry to do a certain thing. Some of them got awards. And we're going to talk later about awards. Should you be trying for awards or not trying for awards? I actually heard a friend of mine, he said the most profitable products he ever got didn't win awards. And the biggest losers financially that he ever got all won the awards. So his goal was not to win awards. But it is to say, one of the most innovative things, I think in hindsight, one of the most innovative things that precision planting did was actually distribution channel. We had all these products that did things in the industry that growers needed, but what precision planting did is looked and said that technology is going to start coming pretty rapidly into the industry, but you don't change out your planter every 2 years. You don't change out your sprayer every 2 years. You don't change out your tractor every 2 years. The large established OEMs, what they're most motivated by is moving new tractors, moving new vehicles. They're going to attribute new technology to you need to buy a new vehicle. And that's going to be slower to help the farmer, but more profitable to the established OEM. And so what precision planting did, we didn't invent the category of add something new onto your old vehicle, but we optimized that category and said, take the planter that you've had for 6 years and make it more efficient and more profitable than any brand new planter coming out of the factory. You talked about lowering the cost. Yeah. That brought the cost structure of participating in precision agriculture from a $200,000 brand new planter to a $30,000 purchase of a few pallets that you installed on your old planter. And as you think about, and we're not going to spend all of the time in Clayton Christensen's disruption model and innovator's dilemma, but he talks about 3 or 4 different triggers that drive disruption in an industry. Of all the things precision planting has done over the last 30 years, product is awesome. The one that trips all of Clayton Christensen's disruption theory is actually our distribution model. And so as the head of product, I'm saying on the line here, and I've said it multiple times, the most innovative thing that precision planting did in its history was actually its distribution model. It was absolutely complemented by innovative products and things. And not all 30 of our products fall under innovation in my definition. There's a lot of optimization projects that we put out as well. But I just want to make the point, so many people look and say, well, that product isn't that innovative. That doesn't mean that its offering into the marketplace is not innovative. It could be a lot of different aspects of bringing a product to market that could be innovative that aren't the literal components that you're holding in your hand.
It speaks to something that you guys paid attention to, and that was thrift.
Yes.
My father would have anointed that. And the same thing, he kept the price of his weeder really low, and so that nobody else could actually get in that. And the farmer, there are years that it doesn't go quite so well.
Correct.
And so that before he jumps over to the latest and greatest that may or may not work, here I can incrementally work my way into this process, and I don't have to get rid of that planter, which I just bought anyway.
Yes.
And of course, in the old days, those weren't very expensive, but now they are very expensive. So yeah, I think that you guys nailed something that I personally resonate with, which is give me a chance to explore this. Give me a chance to try this out before I take all my bucks and dump it down there. And said, what if it doesn't produce I can try this. I like what's going on here. So I credit you with that whole thing. Now, just the fact that innovation isn't just an item, I totally agree with that. And now I want to make sure that this is a respectful comment. I have said this. I said some of the most innovative people in the world were housewives.
Sure.
And it pitches to the baling wire thought.
Yeah.
Given a dilemma
and limited resources,
they had to do something.
Yeah.
Nowadays, maybe the word housewife is inappropriate, but when I grew up, they were housewives, and I always admired the fact that, oh my goodness gracious, well, that was clever.
Yeah.
Well, you couldn't, and so you had to do this, you had to do that. So every place you look, you do not have to develop a thing, but it has to have an impact.
Yes.
And you made something that was an impact. So good for you. That's great.
Yeah. Your sentence there triggers in my mind. Not every customer in the market is interested in innovation. There is actually a very small segment of the industry, or any given industry. There's a book called Crossing the Chasm that talks about the early adopters.
Absolutely.
And one of the other things that we had to wrestle with a lot is we have a small group of people that are interested when the widget is brand new. They love adrenaline, they love risk, they love trying new things, and they love talking about it at the coffee shop.
They do.
You can absolutely sell to them, but by the time they've all bought it, one, you got to take care of them. If there's issues and you don't help them in that issue, they will now be at the coffee shop talking about you in a very different way. Well, that damn
thing didn't work. I
totally.
Tell you.
But what we had to do is we had to mature the product and mature the messaging and evolve the messaging, because the 7,000th person to buy an invention does not want the same thing out of their invention that the first person to buy that invention did. And the example I use is when my mom purchased an iPhone. She doesn't know where Mountain View, California is. She doesn't know who Steve Jobs is. She's never heard of Johnny Ive. She bought an iPhone at Walmart because she wanted pictures of her grandchildren in her hand. There was one feature that she was interested in, and that was compatibility with Facebook, so she could see pictures. By the time you get from Steve Jobs announcing the iPhone, or the Times Square Apple store opening at midnight with 5,000 people in line, to Walmart, where my mom is purchasing an iPhone 7 years later, absolutely the technology has to change, the messaging has to change, distribution has to change. That's not necessarily where we're at in the topic, but it came to mind. Also, some people think that when you launch an innovative product and get it sold to the first person, the work is done. The work is really just beginning.
Absolutely. And that's one of the dark sides to innovation. Be the first one out, or should I be the second?
Correct. Right.
Because the bleeding edge
It's bloody.
Right? It's bleeding edge. Been there, by the way. And so first to be second was one of the phrases I remember when I first joined the big company. And I said, I didn't know quite. It was like first to be second. Yeah, and it was all about not wanting to be in the bleeding edge.
Yeah.
We'll let somebody else come out with it, smaller company come out with it, and then we'll improve upon it because we have engineers who can hone.
That's right.
You know what? To this day, I don't say they're wrong.
It's a strategy.
Because, first of all, it was a very successful company, continues to be a very successful company. Along the way, occasionally they'll need something, and they go get some guy from down deep inside there and get him a job and said, hey, get us out of this mess.
That's right.
It's been there. And so you go, So in my almost last days, there was a brand new supervisor who somehow had this idea that our company was not innovative. And so created a questionnaire, and I got it sent to me. And she came over to interview me. And she said, why isn't the company more innovative? And I said, who says we need to be innovative? I thought she was going to die because I was Mr. Innovation, as you know.
Sure.
And I said, there's a double-edged sword here. This can go poorly if you get the wrong people involved in the whole thing. And not only that, it speaks to an analogy that I use, Diogenes. You probably don't even know who the guy is. He was
Never met him.
Greek philosopher. No, he speaks well of you, by the way.
That's right.
He was a Greek philosopher, and I think he was Aristotle's student, and he was a cynic. Probably would have been considered a real goofball these today. But the story goes that he carried a lantern around with him, and he walked up to people and he put the lantern in their face, and he was looking for an honest man. And I always thought, well, we sort of do that with innovation. We go up and look at, are you innovative? His view was nobody's an honest man. Nobody would be innovative. My version was, would you know one if you saw one?
Correct.
And that's the one I always stuck with. Would you know one if you saw one in the deal? So, yeah, anyway.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Jim, thanks so much for sitting down and talking about your experience and suffering through me sharing my experiences.
Oh, quit it. Stop it. You were doing terrific.
Oh, no, don't. Keep it coming.
Yeah,
keep it coming.
I'm envious. I want to do what you do.
There's so many more questions we're going to get to. We're going to continue this conversation as we move on. Thanks again so much, not just for your mentorship back in the day, but spending the time to come and dust off chapters that weren't written to share your experience.
A lot of them out there. I didn't realize I'd written all that. Anyway, yeah, there's still, you see them. They're piled right
There's
here.
a big pile.
There's a big pile of things that nobody really wants to hear. Thank you very much.
Awesome. For those that wish to share praise, feedback, accolades, or large sums of money, you can reach me at justin@grody.io. For those listening who are now interested in purchasing a Weber weeder, I am pleased to announce the end of season sale. Come on down to the fairgrounds this weekend and give her a test drive. No reasonable offer will be refused. Thanks for your time. Let's do this again soon.